I think I need to preface this with a brief outline of my background. I've been involved in software development for quite a while, in a number of roles, and an observer of the way we make software, unofficially, just deciding whether I would like to work there or whether I want to stay where I am and why we do things the way we do, and officially. Investigating ways of working to try and find what's wrong, fix things. I've also been asked to submit organization software development processes into competitions, which is a horrible thing to be asked to do. How do you describe the way you work as an organization to a set of judges? How do you extract the essence to explain why you're good? And it's very difficult, and the judges are idiots. They just don't understand the specifics. And having been asked to judge competitions like this as well, I can confirm the judges are idiots. It's very, very difficult to share understanding of the way we work. I think we forget how weird software development is. Because you're doing it or around it, the fact that we're creating these complex entities that are intangible tends to pass us by. But if you're an observer of software development, what are you looking at? There's nothing to see. Where is the software? You're looking at representations, various aspects, but you're building these complex, critical artifacts that you can never see, unlike a bridge or a road. So it is really quite a peculiar process. And I think we tend to forget that sometimes. One of the common themes is that we have software projects. Haven't always been doing things as projects. They emerged quite a long time ago now, but it's almost impossible to avoid the word. Alistair talked about software projects. I think the name of this session this morning is projects. Why do we do projects? And I think we need to think about that. I don't think it's a very good idea all the time. I don't want to be rude about projects too much because they do have a role, but not as dominant as it seems to be at the moment. So, projects. What's a project? You ask someone what a project is. It's basically the way we describe our work. We're doing a software. If we had a good idea for a product or a system, we'd set up a project. If we were really smart, we'd set up a company and set up a project in the company and all get rich. But that's the way we do it. If we're describing a piece of work, it's a software project. We say that without thinking. I've got here, it says default descriptor. It's almost the only way of describing a lump of work. If you can think of another word, tell me. And because we use that word, it becomes the model. And it's generally presumed to be a good idea. There are powerful tools in place. It's familiar. If I were to ask you about your software projects, you would tell me the things that you're doing in certain projects. I organize my own work this way. I've actually designed and built software tools to aid project organization, some utilities for projects. It's the way we work. And it's the crucible for team formation. We can set up a project, a team comes together and it works. Or teams spin off projects to manage their work. It's an indispensable word, but we do have to be careful about this because whether we know it or not, there's an awful lot implicit in the term project. So much so that it's difficult to talk about making software without actually talking about projects. The creative act, synthesizing something from need, is not the same as running a project. And I think we have a problem. But the good stuff includes roles. One of the tools that you have available to you is, if you're setting up a project management Tools will offer you a way for, or templates for introducing who does what, when. It allows you to synchronize, coordinate, collaborate, set up various technical roles. Analysts, do we need an analyst? Do we need a graphics guy? Developers? And you can, using past experience from projects, come up with a reasonably good plan for running the way you work. And I'm not saying specifically whether it's agile, not agile. That doesn't matter yet. I don't know if you've come across RACI. I mean, it's a fairly common. Identify the roles. Who is responsible? Who is going to be accountable for whatever it is that is being done? Who you consult, either for their opinion or for knowledge, and who ought to be kept informed. I mean, so it's just yet one of the project resources that we have. However, there is a role that predominates. It is absolutely fundamental, and that is obviously the project manager. It is an important role. In fact, it's so important, it isn't a role anymore, it's a job. And it's not just a job, it's a profession. The person, I mean, you will, I don't know what you will be doing in the future, but often the only or the primary means for progressing in your career is to become a project manager. It normally means you have the respect of your peers, you are technically competent, your decision-making capability is sound, and that your organization's management recognize potential in you. And after some years doing technical work, delivering successfully, not upsetting too many people, degree of diplomacy, then you're offered the chance to manage a project, and you're on your way. Now, if you are doing that, then you are joining a large constituency of project managers. And project managers, projects, are not just software. There is a profession of project management across industry now. Many of those people are not software specific. They can come from other industry sectors, have other skills. Certainly in the UK and maybe elsewhere in Europe, a large number of project managers are ex-military officers. Short-term commissions come out. They are used to command and control, and they know how to manage teams, manage groups, and make things work. And you're becoming one of them. And again, that might be all right, but I suspect there might be problems there. A characteristic of software development and software development projects is they scale. And the way they scale is up, programs, major works, and down. You can have very small projects, but if it's a project, the P word implies to the diligent manager that it should be managed. So you will have teams of 2, 3 that need to be project managed. And what this does is to introduce a partition. The project manager has been promoted above those that he manages. The technical people, and I have picked up an interesting quote from Alistair a few minutes ago when he was talking about his model. The technical staff, yes, it was communicating down to the workers doing the work. That was said entirely naturally. It's accurate. The people that do software development work are the other ranks, the non-officer class. As soon as you become a project manager, you're at least NC, non-commissioned officer, but you're rising through the ranks. And this partition is distinct. It might vary from organization to organization, but there is this apartheid, and I think it might be causing us a problem. We have a sort of bizarre reverse metamorphosis. You have someone who understands the technology, smart, motivated, developing interesting software, delivering value, and then they are promoted. And it's like a butterfly losing its wings, getting fat and turning into a caterpillar. They've turned into management, and the value delivery has changed radically more money, more status, but in terms of actually delivering value, we actually do have a problem there. Now, some people actually welcome the promotion, of course. Status, money, career progression. But over the years, I've noticed very, very large numbers of software people regret having to do this. Yes, you've got to become a manager, that's the way it is. So they, if not abandon their work, then they're very much more limited, and they start to worry about schedules, delivery dates, costs, and stuff like that. And that's life. The other effect is if you're managing a project and you're fitting into the project management world, you will focus on efficiency. You can't be cavalier with the budget. There will be schedules, and we can readily measure the schedule. There's a calendar, the clock, and the budget. You can measure in euros, dollars, zlotys, and those are readily countable. What isn't so easy to focus on is the design excellence, sufficiency, the quality of the system. The numbers there are far, far more difficult. So the tendency is to compromise work delivered, product delivered to budget and to resources consumed. The other effect, of course, is that technical work is very closely supervised. Project managers will manage projects, and they will ask the questions and interfere with the creative act, perhaps to a degree more than they should do. The technical staff are there a commodity, especially if they're contractors. They're brought in because they have skills, perhaps talent. Talent is a bit of a problem because it's simply a dependency that hasn't happened yet. But then you have these PM incursions to find out what this talent, what this skill base is doing. And I believe that this is having a bad effect on us. It's suppressing what might be a profession. I mean, looking at the audience here, where are your predecessors? Where are the old guys? Well, they've turned into the middle management that are busy worrying about their careers and their pensions, and they're not doing software anymore. It's odd. If we were architects, young architects work with old architects, very old architects. A medical doctor can expect to be a medical doctor for 50 years. A software developer, 10 years is okay, and then something happens, and they lose this ability to create and have to manage. Now, I don't know whether we actually would want to be a profession. I don't think professions have a lot to be proud of. They are basically self-interest groups looking after their members' interests and making money, hoarding information. But nevertheless, they do get the ability to work. I think another effect, and I actually changed the last word here. When I drafted this, I said, and business contamination, which sounds slightly more negative than intrusion. And what I find irritating is in the software development world, because we are the workers that the management have to deal with, talk down to, and make sure we do our job, we haven't got our well, apart from technical jargon, which is terrific, we tend to think like business, like management, and it intrudes on what we should be thinking about, which is the ways we deliver software. And there's an awful lot of rather tiresome business jargon. I'm a member of several professional or aspirationally professional organizations, and the trade papers read like they could be accountants' trade papers. It's just businessy speak rather than software development speak, unless you go hunting for the technical aspects. So I think there's a real problem there. So that's effectively what happens. Symptoms. How does this show up in the wider world? And it might be different here. I mean, I've worked in Britain and Western Europe. The energy here is different to Western Europe, and I think it feels newer and more exciting here than where I come from. but I think there are a number of symptoms. The software development population, again, I had to edit this heavily because it looked so negative, and I don't want it to sound negative, is transient. You guys, mostly, apart from a few oddities, outliers, are young-ish, certainly compared to me. I asked this question when I was here a couple of years ago, when I was talking to someone else, and it sounded like a job interview question. What are you going to be doing in 5 years? And the chances are, if you're successful, you'll be a manager. If you're odd, you'll actually persist with the technology. You may well have moved to another organization, but essentially 10, 15 years, and then like your predecessors, you'll be gone. Similarly, unlike professions, the literature, we don't have a standard body of literature. There are great books, and people mention them all the time. In 5 years, they're forgotten. And they're not superseded by something better, they're superseded by something different. And I've got a great bookshelf, but if I were to tell you the titles, you would, 1, not have heard of them, 2, wouldn't care because it was published more than 3 years ago. So again, this transient literature, body of knowledge, is, I think, a problem. Again, if you go to the lawyers, the doctors, the Gray's Anatomy, the architects have, I don't know what architects have, a pattern language, Alexander's pattern language, perhaps. The academic community, what are they doing? They are not the repositories of wisdom. Some time ago, I was asked to review the software engineering courses being produced in America, how they were selling themselves. And I looked through these. They're all different. You wouldn't know it was the same subject. Varies across industry sector, the preferences of the dean of the software engineering faculty, very, very peculiar arrangement, and often it's business oriented. What is going to attract students and their fees? How are we going to make money out of this? Not, this is the stuff you really have to know. The eternal verity is not really that lucrative. SIGs, very good. People, certainly in London, groups come together to meet because they're enthusiastic about Agile, object orientation, particular domains, and they run for a while and then they go, and then a new one will come, transients. The professional organizations are comparatively weak. You're not quite sure what they're doing. I don't want to be rude about that. Do we have a shared memory? Doctors will know the history of their profession, and they will use what has been learnt 5 years, 10 years, 100 years ago. What do we do? Now, it might be premature. We've only been doing this for 60 or 70 years. But we don't seem to have a shared memory yet. It might be premature to think that we have one, but we have so much good stuff, and yet we are throwing it away and rebadging, productizing, and losing what we've got. Similarly, data. I've taken an interest in how we measure software process, and actually its failure. Oddly enough, the Agile community is making a better job of it than most others. But there is almost no capability of sharing data. It is actually quite difficult. But take a note of how much quantitative information you get to see. People will share opinions strongly. Where's the evidence? And there's almost none. Locally, you will learn things. Again and again, smart people will do something and produce some data for local context-sensitive use, but the ability to share, we don't have. So we're making it up and guessing, going on opinion and fashion to a large extent. And we do have a tendency to gurus. We look for wisdom from individuals that either have an excess of personality or some good idea, rather than established ways of working. Again, maybe premature, but it does worry me to a certain extent. And the development culture, it's it's really, I like it a lot, but it does tend to be a monoculture. It's very rare to come to an event like this and say, here's an idea and this is a model and it works here, but don't try it there. Have you ever heard anyone say, don't do this, it won't work for your industry sector, or it doesn't work in this situation? It's, here's a good idea, take it. And everybody gets treated to the same good ideas, but the ability to discriminate is absolutely missing. It's not exactly a monoculture, but it's not far off. And it's down to you as individuals. If you're coming from embedded systems or defense or the commercial world, some things work really well, others are a disaster, but it's down to you to find it out. You won't get any support because we don't know enough yet. And we get this business intrusion. Again, because we are trying to be optimum, we adopt the jargon of the business. And actually, this is down to America. America was extraordinarily generous in the middle of the last century. They shared their know-how, but what they gave to us in Europe was management. And there is a huge, huge surplus of management. That is progress. You progress through management rather than actually the doing of creative work. And we tend to have assumed this and adopted management speak to a degree that tends to blur what we're actually doing. So what are we going to do? There is a really good case for doing nothing. It could well, I don't like this, but it could well be that software development is just a smart person who's picked up some skills and some domain knowledge, and that really is it. If there's talent too, that's great. I mean, it really is, but it can be a problem. It's just a risk, a dependency. There are other good reasons for not doing anything as well. Firstly, whilst there is talk of managing change, making change, disturbing the status quo is dangerous. You can, how shall I say, limit your career quite seriously by suggesting someone does something differently, unless you have permission, and that's not easy to get. You might get lip service, but permission is quite rare. The other thing about this is it's too late for you guys anyway. You're doomed. If we are able to somehow lift the lid, remove the management overhead and take ownership of it, as Agile says it used to in the early days, think in terms of autonomous teams. It's still there, but it seems to have become diluted and complicated over time. It will take time, and by then you'll be senior managers or retired with your riches. However, if you're unwise enough to attempt to make change, and the world is changed by unreasonable people, then at least try and think of another word for project, because then that removes the implication of project management, the profession of project management, who will attempt to intrude on, I mean, in the UK, people are having courses in Agile project management, which is an oxymoron, so far as I am concerned. Agile governance, let's move in, let's grab hold of it again. If we can remove the P word and come up with something else, and I've asked a lot, and I haven't come across one yet. I do like Alistair's collaborative game, but that's not a single word, it's a description. It would start. In English, I'm stuck. I've asked many times. Maybe you've got something in Polish that would suggest a package of work that delivers a result. I'm not having Japanese. I don't like all the Japanese jargon, but that's just me. But if you can come up with an alternative word, at least it gives us a choice. It might well be a project, but it might be one of those or something else, and we can choose ways of working. Look for software-specific alternatives. Early Agile suggested, without removing projects, different ways of working, autonomous systems, I often come across what I call system symbiosis. Individuals integrate with the system they support. The system is the people that support it and the system. And the system responds to the tender loving care that these people that have an intimate knowledge of the system they're supporting have. And the management reporting is almost totally irrelevant. I've seen massive damage done to very effective systems when project management methods were introduced to this system symbiosis. Chief programmer. The first among equals actually directs the project, but that's the person that knows most about the system, has the best capability, and is supported, like architects, senior architect, junior architects. Same type of people, just driven by someone with the most capability. Look to other creative types. What do they do? How do doctors organize their complex work? They don't bring in contract project managers. Architects, film. There's a director, but it's not a project manager. He is the creative heart of the film, using cameramen, lighting, actors, and that whole spectrum of capabilities. Is there anything we can learn from them? The games industry, again, is taking a slightly different track. I don't know if there's anyone from games here, but it'd be interesting to hear from them. So I think what I'd love to find is some other words to replace project. What I'd like you to do is notice, at least notice, that there is this lid on the potential profession and its management, and it's unnecessary. It's very peculiar to the software world. It isn't necessary, but it's there for historical reasons. Agile is an attempt to change the game. Whether or not it can succeed against the project management profession, which basically attempts to command and control, remains to be seen. There's some notes there at that reference, and I'm really happy to argue the case for or against, whether you like this or not. Thank you.
Thank you.